Welcome, everybody, to today's webinar. We're talking about getting started with Studio Suite. My name is Joel Stoner from AlterMedia. What we're talking about today is really Chapter 7 in the User's Guide, where we're talking about, very cleverly, these 7 things you must do in Studio Suite to kind of get it up and running. So just a couple of housekeeping notes. We'll be about 90 minutes, and we'll take a break about halfway through. If I forget somebody, please remind me. Type questions as you think of them as they come up. I'll try to answer them either in line or at the end if I don't get to them by then. And we're going to kind of start up a series of webinars again. So let us know if there's a particular topic that you'd like to see in a future webinar. And one quick note, this is not intended to be a sales-oriented kind of demo showing the whole scope of Studio Suite, but rather it's just a quick start guide on how to start populating Studio Suite with your data. Sometimes that seems daunting at first, so we want to make that nice and easy for you. I am assuming at this point that you have FileMaker and Studio Suite XI installed. Could either be the trial version or the purchased version. Also that you've got it registered and that you are logged in and kind of ready to rock. If you haven't got these things done so far, maybe just don't try to rush and do it right now. Just sit back and watch because we are going to be creating the foundational building blocks for business productivity in Studio Suite. And that means that we need to tell Studio Suite about 7 things. The first one is your company. Everything that you create in Studio Suite needs to be flagged with information about your company. So we need to do that first. And also your contacts. Probably the work that you do is for people and involves people. So we need to get them defined. And there's also users within Studio Suite. And they may have different rules and names and things like that. And also the records that they create should be flagged as for them. So we need to create the users. And then also your rooms, your studios, your edit suites, your stages, your offices, your equipment lockers, anything like that, any space that you're going to be putting stuff in or selling. We need to define that. And a lot of times in those rooms, you might have your equipment. And also blank media inventory. And this is, maybe not as much as we used to do back in the days of tape and whatnot, but still good to have that defined. And then finally, your services, which are the things that you do. If you're not charging so much for studio time, but for services like compositing and things like that, colorization, then we need to define all that stuff. And most importantly, we need to define the rates that correspond with all of these things. Hopefully, we are trying to make some money doing this. So as we create these items, we're also going to define the rates for those. And here's why. So let's talk a little bit next about the Studio Suite module structure. This will kind of make sense in a minute. And some of you have seen this slide before, so I apologize if this is repetition for some of you. But it's good to get a map of how this all kind of flows and works together. So on the highest level, we've got a production. And a production kind of equates to the season of a season of a TV show or a whole feature film or any kind of large multi-phase project. And of course, you could have multiple productions going on at once. Within each production, you've got projects. And that would equate to something like an episode of a TV show or a large aspect of a film like a pre-production, shooting, editing, mixing, a reel of film, maybe one location shoot that you're doing, or any kind of one-off job. So production can have multiple projects within it, episode 1, 2, 3, 4 of the season, or maybe you're doing advertising campaign, a summer advertising campaign, and you've got a 10-second, a 15-second, a 30-second, or maybe different locations, or maybe add 1, 2, 3, 4. So those are all separate projects, so you can manage them separately. But still kind of get reporting as a whole on them from the production. And production projects can also stand alone. So you might just have a one-off job that, today we're doing a mix or an edit for something, and that's just all by itself. Within each project, we've got what we call events, and you could have, of course, multiple events. And this is kind of getting to the crux of what we're talking about today, because in order to have an event, you've got to have resources, and those are your rooms, your equipment, your contacts, your services, those media inventories or materials, and the rates that go along with them. So this could be hourly rates, daily rates, weekly rates, client-specific rates, and so on. And when we apply any of those resources that we're going to be creating today, along with a rate, along with the date and a time. That's what we call an event. And so an event is part of a project, and a project is part of a production. So there's kind of a whole flow of how all this stuff moves across. And these events are also what appear in the calendar. So in order to have a calendar, we need to have all those resources defined. And they're also what can be sunk out or synchronized out to external calendars like Google Calendar, iCal, and mobile devices. And those events are also what eventually can become the invoice, which gets exported out to something like a QuickBooks or other third-party accounting software. So we want to define as much of those kind of account code things within the rates that we talked about earlier. And we're kind of beyond the stage of the 7 things you must do, but of course, just to complete the slide, all of what we're doing today is to create content, or doing in Studio Suite is to create content, and that's all managed in the library module. So we need to set a little bit of preferences for that, and also tasks, read the scripts, all that stuff. And of course, it all links back to the client at the very end, which is why we need to define who the clients are. So let's dig in. I'm going to get rid of that part of it. And let's look at the main menu of Studio Suite. So I've got my chapter 7 in front of me, and I'm going to kind of be paging through that for reference. So sorry if you hear any page turning. But the very first thing that we want to do is set up our company. So to do that, we go down bottom left and we hit setup, and that's the button right there. And here we are in the location tab of the main menu. Studio Suite ships with one company called Planet Perfect Post, and I think it's company number 4. And we make it that so it won't be the number 1 company, because we want your company to be the number 1 company. And so to do that, we hit the plus button right there, and let's call it Joel's Company. Excuse my typing as we go through here. I can never really type and talk at the same time. So let me just correct that. I'll correct this one, but not the other ones. And then what I want to do is make my primary company number 1. Now, some of you may have multiple companies. Maybe you've got a production company, a rental company, a studio, a development company, advertising company. And so you can create multiple companies. Just hit this plus sign multiple times, put the company name. You want to make the one that you use most common be number 1, and that's going to be the default company. Down here, you'll put the address, and you'll notice that it is left aligned, and then you put your phone numbers up here. You'll notice that's right aligned, and that's because we kind of turn this into a letterhead. So the phones are in the upper right, address in the upper left, put in your country. UT offset is a very new thing. You may not have this in your Studio Suite, but eventually this is going to be more important. So if you know that you're, plus 7 hours or minus 8 hours or whatever, put that in. Put in your currency symbol. Most of us have leading. If you have a trailing symbol, put it here. And also your address format. Each contact record in Studio Suite will calculate a mailing address based on, are you doing it in kind of the US format or the European format, which is constructed slightly differently. Over here on the right, pick your language. And then here, this will determine the phone number format for every new contact record that's created. Some people like parentheses, some people like dashes, some people like dots. So however you like it, put in there. Every new contact record will be constructed. The phone numbers will be constructed this way, and your paper size, US letter or A4. So I've got my company called Joel's Company, and I'm going to create another one called Planet Perfect. See, I told you about my typing. Planet Perfect Rentals, and I'm going to make this company number 2. And I did that. I'm going to go over to the Logos tab, and there's 3 logos within Studio Suite. This is the one that we see on screen. It can be bright and colorful. This is the one that's used for printing, and this is left over from the days of black and white printers. Maybe you still have one. So this is allow you to have a black and white safe version of the logo, and this is kind of a light watermark version. So a couple ways you can do this. One, I'm right clicking on it now. I can go insert picture and navigate to that. I'll go to my desktop and just pick that right there. So there it is. We can also actually just drag it in too. So for my print version, I'm just going to drag that right in, and I can also just drag it from one to the other. And Studio Suite will create 2 kinds of letterheads. One that's constructed based on that logo in the center, and the address that we put in and the phone numbers. And the other one is calculated based on the image that you put here. So you might have a letterhead that's got the full image with the phone numbers and address and all that stuff. So whichever one you choose is what you'll end up on your printouts. Let's go to taxes. Always very exciting. You can create multiple taxes in Studio Suite. I've got one in here, LA sales tax. And then if I wanted to ever ship a product to, say, San Francisco, I would put that in here. I have no idea what that rate is. Let's call it 0.095. So notice how I entered that 0.095 is going to be the way we put in a tax rate like that. And if you are exporting out to QuickBooks, you want to put in whatever your tax agency is. In California, it's called the Franchise Tax Board. So we would put that in there. I don't know what yours is in your state. Now, you can set up multiple taxes if you ship to different counties within your state. The official rule is you're supposed to charge them the tax rate at the destination for that product. Most of you don't do that, but if you do, it's good to know that. Some of you may have one tax, some of you may have no tax. And it's important to know that these taxes themselves are actually held as rates in the rates module. And we're going to look at that in a little bit as well. Every contact that gets created has a default tax, and this is where we can set that up. So notice I just created San Francisco. It's there now as the LA as a possible default tax. Some locations actually have layered taxes. In Canada, they used to have one used to be after the other. So I'm going to space on the name of them, but the PMT and the whatever they were. One was calculated after the other, or there's maybe a state tax and a city tax. So that's how you set those up. Here's your default billing terms, pretty straight ahead. Also in different regions, different things are taxable. So in California, for example, only media materials, stuff that you sell, that you hand over to the customer is taxable. And so we would put the tax rate on that. In places like New York, everything is taxable. So you would go in and select the tax for all of the different kinds of things that you would be doing tax on. If you've got multiple taxes set up, I'm going to just use the clear button to clear these out. You can hit the all button, and that's going to put 3 taxes or as many as you've defined over here. Don't know why you would, but it's there if you need to. Next tab over in main menu setup is the titles tab. So different organizations have different words for the client. In Studio Suite, to clarify, the client is the person that's paying the bill. So a lot of studios, they're called the client, but maybe in a larger corporation, that would be the account, the internal account number, or if you do a lot of advertising, maybe that's the agency. If you're a school, maybe that's the student. I think you get the idea. I'm just going to leave it at client for now, so that's fairly straightforward. And below that are all the titles that correspond to the organization that you're working in. So what this means is that every project that's getting created will have, by default, a slot for a producer, an editor, and an A&R person, or in this case, maybe an assistant. And you get a drop-down list of people here. If there is somebody that you have that is not on that list, you just hit this, you go down to the edit sign. And you can edit what this list is. I'm going to get rid of lights, for example. We don't need that. But maybe we do need a chef, because it's always good to have a chef on a project. And to clarify again, the people that we're adding this way, these titles, these slots, are not for people that we're booking or scheduling or tracking finances for, dates or times. We're saying that these people on these projects are just kind of attached. They're related to the project. They're involved in some way or another. And typically maybe from the client side, who is the product manager, who is the, that kind of stuff. So next over is module preferences. We're talking about some general invoice settings. What are the terms? We looked at that already over in another tab, but since it pertains to invoices, let's set that up here. If you've got a late fee for late invoices after whatever time, that's where you would put that in as a percentage. And if you are going to be calculating aging, do you want that based on the invoice date? If I create an invoice today, aging starts as of today, or some people like the aging to be based on the due date. If it's due in 30 days, that's when it officially starts to get late. So different people think about that differently. This text right here is going to be in the invoice comment for every new invoice that's created. You can edit it per invoice, but this will start you off with a default. And you do have the option to have printed invoice payments show only payments for this invoice or payments for all invoices for that client. So it's a couple different options there. And do you want the payments to show on the invoice? Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Do you want to show discounts on the invoice printout? Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Do you want to show aging? Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. And invoices can be sorted a couple different ways. By default, the sort order of the line items on an invoice will be sorted in the order that they were in the project when we created the invoice. Other times you want it kind of subtotaled by category. So here's the preference for that. You can adjust that per invoice. Some of this may not make sense immediately because we're talking about stuff way in the future in terms of the workflow of Studio Suite, but good to know about where this stuff is when you wonder why the invoice is not sorting right. Now you know why. If you are using exporting your invoices out to third-party accounting software like QuickBooks or MYOB or Account Edge or something like that, this is where you set up some of the preferences for that. I'm not going to get into the detail of that right today. This would be more of a tech support issue if you wanted to get into that, or look in the lovely 500-page user's guide. Within invoices, you can print out late letters, and this is the default text of those late letters. And you could go in here and edit that if you want to. Going to now go look at some project preferences. We again set up whatever the name for the client is in another tab, but I'll do it again here. And then here's a preference: multi-day events as continuous. So let's talk about this for a minute. If you are a studio and you're booking short things that 3 hours here, 8 hours there, day at a time kind of stuff, typically you're going to leave this not checked. If you are a rental company, where you send a camera out for 5 days and it's out as soon as it has left the building, it is gone and not coming back until day 5. In that case, your booking style is going to be more continuous. If you're booking people Monday through Friday, chances are they're working Monday, 9 to 5-ish, Tuesday 9 to 5, Wednesday 9 to 5, and so on. They're going to go home every night. If you're sending a camera out, it's not coming back, so it's continuously booked around the clock. So this kind of determines the behavior of how those things are scheduled. You can change that per project and per booking as well, but this is the default. Do we want to include people's phone numbers and emails on the project printouts? Yes or no? Sometimes it's a security thing. This is a default. You can change it per project as needed. And we've got 4 kind of default times that you can set up as quick buttons in projects to be able to enter a time quickly. This is used a lot in Nashville, where they've got specific studio recording times that they work in, or if you're a corporate place where you're always doing 9 to 5 or whatever, you can set up these times and quickly enter them into projects as you create them. Going to go look at events. Do you want to include break time, maybe a break for lunch in the charge account? This is a default. We talked about continuous already. And I'm just going to skip over this boring stuff right there. Media inventory. Do you want to reconcile the media, which means that before you can create an invoice for a piece of media, a tape or SD card or hard drive, whatever you're maybe selling, do you want to reconcile that, which means reduce it from the inventory before that? And if you do you want that to be done automatically? Sometimes they want people to check, I reserved 3 things and I only used 2. So sometimes it's good to not have it done automatically, or I reserved 3 and I used 4. So if you make it automatic, it won't give you that prompt to check that. So I would suggest turning that off. And barcodes for media inventory can be derived either from the UPC code on the item, if you scan that in, or from the record number of the record in media inventory module that's holding the details about a particular kind of media. Let's go look at the library preferences for a second. Formula for library number. So we ship it with SS for Studio Suite to be a prefix. If your studio has initials, you might want to put those in there instead. And then there's a suffix. You can put those in this little quote thing. If you don't want a prefix or suffix, just get rid of those little bits right there. Inside that, it's going to use for the library number a field that's calculated to increment one at a time, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, kind of something like that. Generate barcode from library number. Sure, we probably want to do that. Now, would you want to print the barcodes on any labels? You want to print time codes? Maybe not. A default time code format. And how do we calculate running times? Petty cache. This is pretty self-explanatory. For the sake of time, I'm going to skip over that. Value lists. Let's jump into this. So these are categories in Studio Suite. And you can specify as many as you want. We ship out of the box with something that looks pretty much like this. So you can define these by clicking on the plus button if you want to. Oops, opened up on my other monitor there. Sorry about that. So if I wanted to create a new category, I could put it in here, and then the sort order, I'm going to do meals. And then the sort order, let's put this, maybe I want to put this between media and library. And let's put it before services. So I'm going to make this sort at 9.5. And the reason we have a sort order on this is because it kind of determines how things can appear on a printout or on an invoice or in our reporting. So a lot of times we put the important stuff at the top, like studio time and equipment and people. Less interesting things like media, meals, services, and taxes and credits and things like that down the bottom. So you can totally reconstruct the sort order of this to make it relevant to you, or leave it as is. Quick note that we do ship with the AICE and AICP budget templates and also a recording budget. If those are not relevant to you, you can delete them right now. However, it might be good to wait because we also ship with all of the line items that are in there as well. So it would be hard to find those if you don't have the category to choose them. So we'll delete those later. Or if you want to do that, maybe give us a call and we'll help you out with that. So some of these categories correspond to particular modules within Studio Suite. And so the rooms menu is fairly obvious for the rooms category, equipment fairly obvious for that. And this just basically creates a linkage between the category and a module of Studio Suite. Any internal category should only be here one time. And if you need it more than once, don't worry about it. Just choose the first one. We can also set up default account name and types for QuickBooks or your accounting software here. So that every time you create a piece of equipment, for example, let me go back up here, you don't have to tell it that this is a equipment kind of thing. Excuse my typing again. Or that it goes into QuickBooks as a inventory part. Every time we create equipment now, they're all going to be flagged that way. This checkbox right here is determining what kinds of things will typically be shared with external calendars like Google Calendar or iCal. Rooms, most typically. People, most typically, yeah, probably not equipment and things like that. And then whenever we have a invoice line item that appears on an invoice for something like a room, what kind of data do we want to be used to describe about that? The start date, start time, end time, action, service name. Those are all important when we're charging by time. If it's maybe a meal, all we really need there is the item name. We don't need to say what time or the date it was sent. So these are default invoice descriptions. So the other thing about that is we do want to get this set up early because all the rates that we're creating for these categories will inherit this default. You can always go back and change them at the rate level, but it's nice to do it once and have it flow from there. Next tab over is booking statuses. So whenever you book something, a room, a person, equipment, these are the choices of statuses that you can elect to have for each event. If you want to edit this list, just click the edit button. Make any changes that you want to here. Might be good to delete a number of things. I will make a note that these items right here pertain to how equipment is checked in and out. And so those are what we call special statuses, and they appear over here. Some status are special. So hold, we want to flag that as our hold one status. You might have a different word for it. Maybe you have a different language for it. So that way, if you ever, say we're going to have a 1 hour hold on the end of this booking, it knows what color to use. Same for equipment. What's going to be checked out, what has been checked out, what is going to be checked back in, when is a return overdue. Some of these are actually incorrect here. Let me set that up properly. Out of service. And I notice over here that yeah, checked out. So kind of forgot to mention over here on the left side, this is where we can pick a status color. So out of the box, we ship with green as being the color for confirmed. And you can adjust those however you like. You notice it's also going to set up an HTML equivalent for that color for some use elsewhere in the system, which I think you can edit if you'd like to. Best just to leave it alone. Now, some statuses are need special care. Some kinds of things we don't need to have a conflict checked. So, for example, if something is canceled, we don't need to check things that are going to conflict with the canceled event because that's no longer a conflict. Also, things that are we need to omit from reports. So canceled is a good explanation there. So if we're wanting to see how much studio time we booked, but I canceled a bunch and I've left it in there just as a record, I don't want to report on that canceled time. So this is where we can omit events that have been canceled from our reporting. Some other kinds of things we don't want to show in our internal or external calendar. So for example, any hold to, any bumpable, any quote items, maybe we don't want to show in the calendar. Actually, quote stuff we don't want to see in reports either, because that will make us feel like we've got more business than we do. Okay, so those are booking statuses. Record numbers is next. If you need to adjust where your next project starts, maybe you've got an existing number sequence from some old system you're using, and we want our projects to start at number 1000. This is where you do that. For all the different modules, you just click on the button for the module, and let's do the same thing for equipment. We want our equipment to start at 1000. Miscellaneous. I don't think there's anything very interesting here. This is all fairly advanced stuff, so we'll skip that for now. Okay, so that's step one. We've defined all of the stuff in our company. I'm going to flip a couple pages here. Remember to ask any questions if you have any, just so I know you're still alive. Oh, somebody asked one. How do you change or reset record numbers? Okay, I just answered that. They all should start at 0, not 100 and something. I don't know, it's suite X and not XI. So I think I just answered that. I'll pay more attention to the questions. Okay, so the next step is contacts. Let me flip. So obviously, to get in contacts, we go to the upper left button here. This is obviously where we keep track of not only our clients, but our vendors and our employees and our personnel, our prospects, and our locations. So everybody gets added in here, and it's pretty self-explanatory. We just hit the new button. And by the way, you can also do Command-N on a Mac or Control-N on a PC. So I'm a keyboard junkie. I like to do those kind of things. But so Command-N here to create a new record, and I'll put in my name. I'll try not to misspell it. And you would obviously put in your company if there was one. Now, when it turns yellow, what that means is there is a duplicate record of that in there already. And maybe I want to go check that out. So if I hit this button, this arrow right there, it's going to go find the two records that are duplicating. So there's the first one. It looks like that they're pretty set up. So I'll put in Justin Stoner. That's my son. So he does not exist in there yet. So we will put in the company, address, and all that information. One quick note, if you put in a zip code, it's going to pop in the city and state for you, excuse me, in the country. And if we wanted to click, see where this would be on a map, we can click that and it would open up in a browser. That's what that is. My system default is to put in a US address format. If I clicked Euro, the printout would look like a European address format. Good to know. Male, female, checkboxes, all of these kinds of items here. Phone numbers. This is all really self-explanatory. But you might have a couple phone numbers for somebody, and maybe you want to specify that this one is the primary number. So if we check that box and I click out, that's going to be the first number in the sequence. So that's what that means. And let's make that be the mobile number. If you want to edit this list, just go down to Edit, Mobile Number. Emails, pretty much the same way. A primary email, you check that checkbox. URLs, maybe you put in that company logo, anything else like that. If you will be sending them text notifications, you want to put in their mobile number here. and also their carrier. And these are all U.S. carriers. Um, in the U.S., we get to send messages in the email format for SMS, essentially for free. In other countries, I understand that there's not necessarily free, but there is a formula that corresponds to the email format that is used to send that. So you might want to check out some of those. FTP information for this person. Down here are some things that are actually kind of important. Um, so, title position. If we make somebody a resource, um, we want them to have certain positions that they can do. So let's say Justin is a cameraman and a casting director, and he is also a composer. So what I'm doing there is holding down the Command key on my Mac. I think it equates to Control on the PC. I've got 3 items selected there, and in order to get them all entered in there, I want to hit the Enter key, not the Return key, but the Enter key, and I can see that they're in there. And if I wanted to also type something in, I can do that as well. So let's say he does something else, blah blah blah. And if we need to edit that list, you hit the pencil, and you can edit all of the options that are in there. So this one is fairly important. Category is more oriented towards people and towards companies. So this is an air freight company, an airline. So this enables you to quickly search in Studio Suite for all of the airlines that you've got in there. Talent, if you're managing musicians or actors or voiceover people, this is where you would put in the kinds of things that they do. If they were one of those kinds of things, you might want to put in their style. Maybe they're a classical musician or a male voiceover kind of thing. Unions and affiliations and groups down here. So you might have 1,000 contacts, and maybe you want to set up some different kind of subdivisions of those people. Maybe we want to send birthday invites to Halloween party invites, people that we want to pursue for business. Maybe we've got studio time available and we want to put them in that group. This also works for educational institutions where they maybe want to separate student contacts out by grade, freshman, sophomore, or even by class. So if you've got, camera operations 101 gets the cheap camera, and advanced camera operator gets the more expensive camera. There's more to that a little bit later on. But so if I wanted to add this person to these particular groups, I would just click on them. If I wanted to create a new one, I would put it up here and any comment about it here. So those are groups. Follow-ups. So if I wanted to remind myself to call Justin on the 26th, I would put that in here to say hi. And on the 26th, I'm going to get a little note on my main menu to give him a call. I have to remind myself that we're not doing a demo, we're doing setup information. So I've set Justin up as a client. He's also an employee. If I need to send his bills somewhere else when he is a client, I would click on this billing tab, and I can either create a new contact or add it to an existing. So if he's on the phone giving me his accountant's address, I would hit new, and I would put in Justin's accountant as this record. And so notice now that we're on the billing tab, and it says Justin's accounting, and I can hit the main tab to get back to his main record. And I can see now that billing is underlined, telling me that whenever I make an invoice, the invoice is going to be set up to go to Justin's accounting address. Let's go over to the financial tab. Before we do that, I want to tell you about one other thing. Let me bring up our website for a moment. So note this URL, stusuite.com/support/updates. And if you scroll, this has all of the downloaders for StuSuite XI, X9. It's got our current manual here, some FileMaker downloads. Note that you do need registration numbers for those, so it's not like free software. And some of the extra web components are all here, latest versions. Down at the very bottom are plugins in case you're setting up a new machine. And way down at the very bottom is this migration template. And so if you download that, it will look something like this. And so notice down at the bottom, there are 2 tabs, the contacts tab and the equipment tab. So for contacts, You can basically, if you've got them in Excel already, you can just stick them in here. It'll make them nice and easy to import those into Studio Suite. Particular note on these columns here: if somebody is a client, put a 1. If they're a vendor, put a 1 there. If they're staff, put a 1 here. And that way they'll show up in the appropriate chunks within Studio Suite. I think this is all pretty self-explanatory. One note: if you do this yourself, do give a call into tech support, because what we need to do is parse out your phone numbers and emails and URLs into another table, and there's a script to do that, so we'll help you with that. Kind of jumping ahead here, but there's another tab here for equipment, just to let you know. We'll look at this a little bit when we get into the equipment inventory module. So I'm going to hide that for now, but just know that if you go to that website, studiosuite.com /support/updates, you can download that migration template. Okay, we talked about addresses and importing. So if you've got them in FileMaker, you can also go down to Import Records, go to File, and here's where you would pick a file that you want to import from. And I'm not going to go into too big a detail there, but note that you can import from FileMaker, you can import from Excel, you can import a number of different ways. So let's say that Justin is also an employee. And this is kind of important. So I'm going to go over to, I'm going to hold up on employee for just a second. I'm going to go to financial. This is where, for this customer, we're going to go to credit limit. So let's say I'll give him a $10,000 credit limit. And then if he's got invoices that are overdue, it's going to reduce that, of course. And if he's over limit, it's going to show there. And it's also going to look up our billing terms for him here. Also default rate card. And I don't think I'm going to get into rate cards today. And also default client tax rates. So let's put that information in like that. One note I just want to follow up a minute ago on importing is that there's a checkbox on that import, and you want it to auto import certain information. So there's a checkbox there, and it takes too long to show you. But if you are going to do that import, make sure you do check that import checkbox. Sorry, that auto enter checkbox. So I just wanted to go over some of that financial stuff very quickly. Now I want to come into the employee because what I want to do is make him a resource. This button here, make resource, is also right here. So I'm going to make him a resource in the category of people. And what that's going to do is essentially make a little clone of Justin over in another table that will make him available in the calendar. And I'm going to say yes. So now he is available to book as a resource in a project. And if I go back to my employee tab, he is now officially a resource. And I can also create a user account for him. But before I do that, I need to make sure that he is an employee. And this is the checkbox that we do the employee with. And let's say he works full-time. So now that he's a full-time employee, I can create a user account for him. And when I do that, we need to put in an account name. So I'm just going to call it Justin. I'm going to give him a secret password of the number 1 and also privilege set. So this is where we kind of determine the roles that different people play in Studio Suite. These have decreasing functionality and visibility. The first level that blocks financial information is editor engineer. They can create events and things like that, but they can't see any pricing information. So I'm going to make Justin a manager. So that's the quick and dirty, easy way to do that. And then Studio Suite also wants to know about some information for our Suite Cloud platform. You would fill that out and hit submit. I'm just going to hit cancel for now. And that will bring us back to our contact. And now we can have the option to delete that user account, and we can put in some other information about when he was hired, commission, sick days, salary, tax ID number, and all that stuff. Note that this particular tab has its own permission, so you probably don't want all of your staff and crew to be able to get into this tab and look at everybody else's stuff. So I want to show you other thing about creating users. We can create them here from the contact record. We can also go into setup and go up here to user accounts from the main menu setup. And here are a list of all of my users. I can manage them here as well. And there's Justin, the one that I just created. So if I wanted to create a new user account from here, I would just click the new button. I'll type in, I'm just going to make up a name, Mike. And we'll give him another password of 1 and privilege set. Let's make him editor engineer. And I'll hit OK. And so now he has access to the system with the privilege set of editor engineer. And now it's going to ask me to associate this user account to a contact record. So I'll pick Mike Rooster. And we need to do that so that any information relating to this user is linked to the contact record and vice versa. While we're in the user account area, I'll mention that different users don't need to have all of those buttons on the main menu. So this is where you can choose to have fewer buttons display. And so we've got 5 kind of main menu choices. And as I pick these, we can see that they're kind of the number of buttons are decreasing. So let's give him 6 buttons. So the next time we go back, he'll see 6 buttons. Which buttons do appear are determined by your account permissions. So because we gave him a manager, he's got access to just about everything permission-wise. But if we want certain buttons for him to not get into certain things, we can manage that here. So I'm going to turn off his access to barcodes. And I can filter these by module. So maybe I don't need him to go in and look at invoices. So they're all turned off. Now it's turned on. Maybe equipment. Does he have access to equipment? He does, but not to the rates tab. Oh, and I wanted to show you the contacts. Note that the employee info tab here has its own permission. So if I turn that off when Justin logs in, he won't be able to see the information on that tab for himself or for anybody else. It's more of a owner type of thing to be looking at. So this is where you go in and adjust those permissions. For each new record that this person creates, we can determine whether it will flag those new records as clients, vendors, employees, and so on. Clients is probably most typical. Here's where we can set up what the next, if they have to change their password and what interval, things like that. What startup alerts this person is supposed to be able to see on startup. So if this person is in charge of invoices, they should see invoices past due and so on. And down here in the bottom right is a default company. So we're actually on Mike's account, and he works for my company called Planet Perfect Rentals, which means that whenever he creates a contact or a piece of equipment or a project, it's going to get flagged as a Planet Perfect rental project as opposed to a Planet Perfect post project. Okay, so email setup. This is a little complicated. If this doesn't make total sense for you, give a ring into tech support. We'll help you out. You only need to populate this if you are sending emails directly out of Studio Suite. Now you can also create PDFs, of course, and attach them through your default email client. But if you do want to use this, you do need to get this set up. Here's some project preferences for Mike, this user. Every time he creates a new project, what kind of project is it? Since I just mentioned ago that he was doing rentals, if I had that in my list here, I would pick rentals. So I'm just going to make him do audio mixing or ADR. That's Mike does ADR type work. The status for all of his projects, maybe he needs to get his things approved. So we'll default that to waiting approval. The projects module has different sort orders that's used within it. And so you can set up what your preferred sort order is per project and how you want the rates to be filtered by. You might have 1,000 rates in Studio Suite for all of your equipment. And if you look at a piece of equipment, you don't want to filter through 1,000 different ones. So you would select that to be item, and it would only show rates for that piece of equipment. And when Mike creates a project, is it going to default to being a budget or quote or bid, or is it going to default to be an actual? Depends kind of on your workflow. And down here, default times and status. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Here's a preference. Always keep the calendar window open. I like my calendar to always be in a separate window, maybe even on a separate monitor. So this checkbox will do that. If you want it to always, all of Studio Suite to be in one window, one space, then deselect that. If you want to allow projects to sync to calendar, do that. And then here's a default load time. So when the Studio Suite calendar loads, because time is infinite behind us and infinite in front of us, we have to load a subset of that so it doesn't take literally forever. So what seems most useful is to do maybe 2 days in front, 14 days forward. And this kind of depends on how much you need to see it once in the calendar. If you scroll forward or backward past that range, it will of course load the next range. But the reason we try to minimize this is for speed. So if you don't need to load a year's worth of events, which will take a while, do a much smaller thing. External APIs, don't worry about this. And account permissions we talked about already. Okay, so that's Studio Suite users. Let me check my questions here. Can an employee be listed in 2 or more companies is a question. So what you would do there is, let's see, an employee listed in 2 or more companies. They can always be used in 2 or more companies, but one of them is the default. And I'm not sure if you're asking about in contacts, can you have the same person at 2 different companies? What you would do there is actually create 2 separate records for their instance at each of those companies, and choose the right one when you're selecting them. And if that doesn't answer your question, give a call into tech support. Okay, so we talked about permissions and licenses and user accounts. Let's one more thing on user accounts, passwords. So I'm going to come in here to user accounts. Let's say you fired somebody. You would deselect the checkbox, and that is going to remove their access to the system, but keep that user account. Maybe you just want to keep it for reference, or maybe they're coming back later or something like that. So in that case, you would check it again. And then this actually serves a dual function. One is, at this point, we have to put in whatever his password was, but this is also how you give somebody a new password. If they don't like their old password or they want to change it, and you need to give them a new password, this is where you would do that, by disabling their account and then re-enabling it. If you are wanting to change your own password, you have to be logged in as a current account, and then from here you can change your own password, but to change other people's passwords, you have to disable the account and then enable it again. So rooms. I think you're probably catching on at this point. These are all of my rooms. If I want to create a new room, I hit the new button, and I'll call it my room. And again, this would be a studio, an edit suite, a stage, an office, a closet, a hallway, anywhere you're going to put stuff, anything you're going to charge for, something like that is something that we want to keep track of. So we optionally can put in the dimensions of the room, the phone outlets and extensions. Whenever we create this room, what else comes along with it? Maybe there's a vocal booth or something like that. Rooms can have barcodes. Some people like to book rooms via barcodes, so you could put that in there. And then any AC outlets, breakers and amps, power that go along in there. This is all optional, but good to keep track of. So you've got it available. You don't have to go hunting around in the switch panel. To make a room a resource, we have to have it a room type. You can optionally choose which building it's in. And then by clicking this, it will become available as a resource to schedule into projects and also, of course, in the calendar. So I'll say yes on that. So that's about it for defining rooms. They're pretty simple and straight ahead, with the exception of rates. We haven't talked about rates for people yet, so let's start it here for rooms. So this is how much we're charging for the room, and we don't have any yet, so we'll create one by clicking the plus button. And we have the option of creating either credit rates, if this is like a refund type of situation, or most typically you're going to do a regular rate. So it's pre-entered the category. A subcategory is the kind of room it is. The item is called My Room, and the rate name, let's call this hourly. And so the unit of measure down here at the bottom is also hourly. If I were to call this daily, I would make the unit of measure be day. So this menu right here determines how Studio Suite is going to be calculating the price. If it's hours, it's going to count the number of hours. If it's days, it's going to count the number of days, and so on. Other things like per gigabyte, you'll have to type those totals in manually. It can't calculate that. But let's say we charge $100 an hour for this, and maybe I spend $10 an hour on rent and electricity and maintenance and things like that to keep this room working. And so that means I know I've got a $90 profit margin, or a 900%. And if I know that my buddy down the street is charging $150 an hour for a room that couldn't possibly be as good as mine, I can put in the market rate there to be able to show the client at the end of the project how much they saved by working here instead of there. If this were a client-specific rate, I can click on this client thing. This brings up our list of clients, and I'll say that James Video at Post House, this is a special rate that I apply only to him. And we can multi-select this. If I hold down, is it Shift? I think I can pick a couple different. Yeah, so Shift will let you create a rate for a client rate for multiple clients. Rate cards. So rate cards allow you to define different rate structures based on the kinds of work that you're doing. So the list here is kind of explains the picture. 0 is the most common thing you'll use, and that makes it work for everything. So typically you'll just leave that unless you really do need to set up internal rates, external rates, corporate rates, commercial rates, educational rates, TV rates, film, and so on. You can add to this list if you like, but I think this covers most people. When you create a project, you will pick which rate card you want to apply to the project, and the default rates will come in automatically. And I would suggest that unless you've got thousands of rates, you may not need to bother with rate cards. It just makes it a little easier in like a really high volume place that's got a ton of different kinds of work that they do. Now, rates can also be particular to a action. So if in this case we are doing video editing, whenever I book the room at this rate, it's going to pop in the action of video editing. So also notice that the rate name gets appended with the client names. So when that rate comes up, we'll see the client name there as well. So that means it's not great to have a rate be applied to more than one client, because we'll see it there. It's more of a one client at a time thing, but you can do it if you have to. Over in the upper right is external accounting details. So if you're using QuickBooks or any kind of third-party accounting software, this is where you can optionally put in a class or category, the item type. This system currently is set up for QuickBooks, and the item types must be, I believe, one of these items here. So let's call this a service, and the item name could be abstracted. So this is my room. Maybe in QuickBooks, I want all of my studio time to be called studio time. So I don't, if I had 30 rooms, it's not going to create 30 items in the accounting software. It's just going to create one called studio time. And then the account would maybe be services. Overtime. So maybe after 8 hours, I charge a different rate. So I click the create OT rate. I'm going to say hours before overtime is 8, and at that point I'm going to go to $120 an hour, and the expense is the same thing. Maybe after 8 hours, it actually gets a little cheaper. So I'm going to make this my expense gets a little less. If this were a rate for a person, the expense might get bigger instead of smaller. And create a double overtime rate. Maybe after 12 hours, we want to go to $150 an hour. Something like that. So that's how we create a number of different rates. Now, because I created one rate that had an overtime rate and a double overtime rate, it actually creates those as 3 separate rates. And we need to do that for QuickBooks and a lot of accounting software so that the math all translates properly. So those are rates for equipment, rooms. And speaking of equipment, the next thing that we're going to look at is the installed equipment. This is the equipment installed in my room, and I don't have any, so I'm going to go directly into the equipment inventory. Okay, so now we're in equipment, and here's our list of equipment. To create a new piece of equipment, this is a little trickier than any other module because we've got some options here. We can create equipment as either an item, which is what you would think of just as a regular piece of equipment, and then we can also do a collection. And a collection of equipment is, think of a museum where they've got a collection of very expensive things. And in the world of Studio Suite, it would equate to something like a very expensive camera that you might have 5 of. And this may apply more to like a rental style workflow where somebody says, hey, next Friday I need two cameras. Today I don't care which of the five exact same ones that I get. I just know I need to put two of them on reserve. So that would be a collection. They're expensive. They are all kind of similar. We need to book them kind of generically, but when we use them, we want to check out a specific one and we want to make sure that we get a specific one back. So that's a collection. There's also something called a pool, and a pool is something like a sandbag or an adapter or a cable where you might have 50 of them. You don't need to track them uniquely. They all might have the same barcode. They're all pretty much exactly the same or different, but you've just got a lot of them, and you don't need to busy up your equipment inventory with a lot of different version, records for sandbag number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Unless you've got a 5-pound and a 10-pound, then it might make more sense to have different records. So for now, I'm just going to create a new regular piece of equipment. New regular piece of equipment. So let me go into the detail tab. Try it there. Oh, that's kind of odd. Oh, maybe I turned off my permission to create equipment. Let me try that. Go into user accounts. I think I'm still logged in as Joel. Account permissions. Select all. Okay, so I am still logged in as Joel. I'm going to go into equipment. Create a new record. There we go. Okay. So I must have accidentally turned off that permission. So here's a drop-down list of all different kinds of equipment. You can also type in your own piece of equipment. Maybe this is, I don't know, an Avid thing. Maybe it's a model X1000. And this is a, I don't know, road mixer. No, let's call it a input box. Whatever that may be. So we'd obviously put in a serial number, barcode, purchase date, and are we leasing it or owning it? All these fields are fairly self-explanatory. Put in as many as you can. They're all essentially optional. Definitely recommend you put in the serial number. Any kind of small things like a user manual, little power cable, something like that you could put down in accessories. Any comments like I got a deal, or I sent it out, or it's behaving strangely. Down here we can create a package. So whenever we book this item, we want to also book another item that goes along with it. So I click the plus button on the package. Here's a list of all of my equipment, and let's say that we pick the Grass Valley digital switcher whenever we book the input box. And we can pick as many of these as we like. So I'm going to do a collection now. And this is a little bit different. So I'm going to create a new collection. And I'm going to call this a expensive X5000. Equipment has to start with the letter X. Camera. This is let's have fun and call it an 8K camera. And purchase date is today. And let's say the cost on this thing is $100,000 because it's an 8K camera. I want to put in as much information as I can about this. Maybe I bought a bunch of these on the same lease. Maybe they're owned by Planet Perfect Rentals. I could set up the insurance. The reason we want to put as much information in here as possible is because they're all X amount that I'm about to create here are going to have the same information. If I wanted to pop a picture in here, I can right-click, do Insert Picture. The next important thing is to create rates for this thing. So I'm going to create a rate very quickly. So it made it a resource. Making a resource takes a bit of time because we've got tons of them. And so every time it does it, it needs to check them all. I don't need this piece of equipment to be in the calendar, so I'm going to hit no. And note, if you're adding in hundreds of pieces of equipment, you can hit this stop asking button and it'll stop asking you about that question. So I'm going to put in the rate name here, and because it's so expensive, I'm going to put in a rate of, I don't know, $2,000 a day. Let's pretend. However, because it's a day rate, I have this option to do bill days per week. And I'm going to say that if you rent this thing for a week, I'm only going to bill you for 4 days. If you rent it for a month, I'm only going to bill you for 12 days. And let's say the expense, this is an expensive lease that I've got. So per day, I'm actually paying, I don't know, 120 bucks a day, something like that. So we've created a rate. We've put in some basic information. I could put in a picture. I could say where I got it from, what version it is, how much it weighs. Let's call it 9 pounds, like that. And at this point, what we want to do is say how many of them we've got. So down here on the collection, I'm going to go plus. How many items of these do I have? So what I'm defining here is not a particular single individual camera. I'm defining the set over here in this collection information. Now I'm saying how many individuals do I have? Maybe I've got 5 of them. So I'm going to hit OK. And so what it's doing right now is it's going to create those 5 separate cameras that are all the same. But it's going to allow us to have different serial numbers, different barcodes for each one of them. And it's also going to apply the rate to them as well. Had I created more than one rate, all of them would be there as well. It takes a little bit of time. Okay, so here we are. We're looking at our collection, the equipment collection, and we've got 5 actual cameras underneath there, and I can click the Go To on one of them. And now we're in the equipment inventory, and we can start putting in serial numbers. I'm going to call this 9999. I'm going to give it a barcode of 999 as well, 9999. And I'm going to go to the next one, and I'm kind of, I guess, doing this in reverse order, but I'm going to make this one 8888. And you'll see this dialog come up. As a result of that change, you may need to update any calendar presets that contain this item. So calendar presets are related to those resources, and anytime we change important details about a resource, like a serial number or a barcode, the preset and everything else needs to know about it. If I change a more minor detail, like an accessory, it doesn't need to know about that. So now I've got 2 bookable collection items called the camera, and they actually now are listed in my equipment list, all the same. So if you've got a lot of different things that are of the same type, that's how you would do that. Okay, so that's our equipment. And I think I've covered a lot of equipment. Again, I'm not going to get into how to use it. We're just talking about setting up your initial data. Oh, something else about equipment I want to mention. Earlier in the presentation, I talked about modules that are applicable to categories. And we set up the equipment module to be applicable to the equipment's category. So some people with a ton of equipment, they want to set up equipment in different categories. Audio equipment, lighting equipment, film equipment, video equipment, furniture, something like that. And that's so that you can, obviously get different reporting on how much lighting equipment did we rent this year, how much audio, how much film, and so forth like that. So that's certainly something that you can do. And when you are making something bookable, you would make it bookable in the appropriate category. I can change the category of something after it's been made a resource, but we'll get this dialog again as a result of that change. You may need to update the preset. So now this camera, number 8888 is in the category of productions, and it'll come up in different reporting than the other stuff that's actually equipment. I'm going to just put it back to equipment to make it make sense. Okay, so that's it for equipment. Let's move on to something many of you may not even be using anymore, which is a media inventory. So this is where we keep track of the different kinds of stock that you're going to have. This was originally written for tapes and CDs and things like that, but you can also use it for things like gels and batteries, anything like that, any kind of expendable that you sell and need to come back with. A lot of people are putting hard drives in here these days because clients are buying hard drives. So let's do one of those. So I'm going to hit the new button at the top. Could also do Command N or Control N on PC. And let's make this a who makes I remember Cyclist. Let's make this a Fuji hard drive. Call it a 2 terabyte. Hope I spelled that right. Call this a hard drive. And this is a disk. And we can set up a media code for this, which is a good idea. I'm going to call this HD 2THD. 2 terabyte hard drive. If this had a UPC barcode, I could put it on there. I'm going to put in that 9876 3. I'm going to add that. And then we can put in what our expense is. When we make media have a rate, it's got to be bookable first because the rate's actually tied to the bookable item / resource. So now it's making it bookable. And I don't need this in the calendar. And so this kind of thing, we sell in units of each. And maybe this is, I don't know, 200, and we buy them for 150. And let's say that we've got, I don't know, 10 of them in stock. That means we've got 10 available. And I want to be notified when I get to 4 and below. And typically I order 10 of these, and I have 0 on order. I could also pop in a default vendor. So this is a pop-up list of all of my vendors from the contacts module. Pops in all that information. If I wanted to create a new vendor, I could do it from there. If I wanted to create a new purchase order, I click this button. It'll have a new purchase order with this item and made out to this vendor. So media inventory items have rates as well. So when I filled in these fields right here, it created a rate for me automatically. I could go on to create additional rates if I wanted to, sell to other clients at different prices and things like that. But that is basically the story for media inventory and rates. So just to look at a couple things, I'm going to go into projects. We're not going to create a project, but I do want to show you that if I click Add Items and I go to Equipment, I've now got my different cameras. And a quick note on this, because I made them as a collection, I can come in here and I can type the left bracket, call that C for collection, and that's showing me that I've got a collection with a quantity of 5 and availability of 5. So just for kicks, let me book it for today, the 23rd. I'm going to click this and I'm going to say that I need 3, because I think that was the number that I used. On the 23rd, I'm going to book 3. And I'm also going to go to my media tab. And here is my Fuji 2 terabyte hard drive. It says I've got 10. And maybe on this project, I want to book 2. And then I think I created people. I think I created Justin. There he is. So I'm going to add all those things to the project on January the 22nd. And I picked a huge project, so they're down here at the bottom. So there are those things. But what I want to do now is come back in here. And if I look at those same things again, Fuji, it's showing me that I've got 8 available. So it's withdrawn those from my inventory. If I go to my collection on the 23rd, well, it should be showing me that I've only got 3 there on that date, or 2 available. Oh, you know why? Because at this point, they're just on reserve. I've not booked an actual number of them. So if I were to scan in a barcode for one of them, I'm going to do that now. Go to my barcode view. 8888 was one of those items. So now we're going to have that item showing up as added to the project down here at the bottom underneath my collection. And so the math on this works a little bit differently too. So when I said I needed 3 of them, that totaled up 3 of them at 2,000. That added up to 6,000. Now that I'm breaking it out, I've got only 2 times 2,000 is 4,000 plus the one that I booked. So when I collapse these, notice that it adds up to the original 6,000. So now I've only got one of them scheduled. So when I go to my expensive camera, it's in my collection. It's showing me I own 5, only 4 are available because I've now booked one of those, and I still have one of them not booked. So that's how that works. So I just want to give you a little insight into the collections and that the fact that those bookable items that we did create are showing up there. Okay, last thing that we're going to create today is services. So everything that we've talked about so far has a physical thing, whether it's a person or a room or a piece of equipment or a piece of media. Sometimes you're providing services that don't have physical things, and we do that in the categories and items module. And another note that I mentioned earlier, StuSuite ships with all of the AICE and AICP budget template items in there. if you want help getting rid of those because they don't apply to you for some reason, let us know and we will help you dump all of those out. If you do want to keep them, but you just don't want to see them all the time, over here we've got two little hide things. So for the most of the time, I want to hide those because I don't deal with them very much. So I'm going to hide them, and when I come here, they won't be in my list. But here are those cameras that I created, and then we're going to find the media that I created right there. There's our Fuji. So every time we make something a resource, or make it bookable, as I say, it creates a little record of it over here, and this is the thing that's actually getting booked. So this is also where we would create any other kind of service. And so I do have a number of services in here already, so I can filter this view to show all of my services. And I could filter a subcategory of show me post. So these are all of my, I guess that doesn't filter. And then I can also search for things here too. So if I wanted to search for meals, I have to search for M-E-A-Ls, M-E-A. So there's my meal item right there. Very important. So if we want to create a new item, you guessed it, we click the plus button up here. And let me say, I'm going to click the plus button, and it's reminding me that if it's a room, equipment, media, or contact, go create it in that module, because there's a lot of good metadata available in those modules that's not available here. So I'm going to click OK. What's the category that this belongs into? I'm going to create service, and let's call the item set stage. Maybe we want a bill for that. So for each of these items that we create here, they don't have all the other metadata like phone numbers and serial numbers and barcodes and all that stuff. And it's not a physical thing, so maybe we don't need to check for conflicts on this. Autofill times, in the earlier today, we talked about default times for items. You either do or don't want those times to fill on this. I'm a header. That's more of an advanced topic. We'll skip that for now. Credit item. We also have a new option here to add to all new projects. So maybe that meal item I created, it'd be good to have a meal on every project, right? So I would click that checkbox and every new project would have a meal on it. I don't need that on set stage. I can also set up default booking statuses. So whenever I do this, I want to make it hold a hold to, because I need somebody to approve it or something like that. Remember, those booking statuses are user definable. I can put a barcode in here if I want to book it by a barcode. And if it's a member of one of the budget templates, AICE, AICP, or one of your own, you can put in some of those codes here for that. And from this stage, I can also add what we call an also book. So I'm going to say that whenever I am doing this service called set stage, I am also going to do what would make sense here? A meal, since I keep talking about meals. Am I hungry? And then once I do that, I can pick which rate I'm going to apply to that item when it is used as a also book for the stage. And so if something has multiple rates, maybe an hourly rate, a daily rate, you can pick which one is applicable. And we can also put in a quantity. So maybe I need 3 meals when I'm setting the stage. And then we have to talk about a rate, of course. So when we're creating a rate, we all know how this works now. So we'll create a regular rate, and we'll call this each, because we're doing meals as each kind of things. And I don't know, let's spend a nice $40 on this. And the expense is 40. There's no client, there's no rate card, there's no action really. We could say eating. We can also type in here. I should use a better example. Okay, so now we have created a service called. Okay, at this point I've forgotten which one I just which one I just created. Sorry about that. Talking and doing all this at the same time doesn't help. Okay, so let's hope whatever I created is right there. Oh yeah, set stage. So there it is. There's my meals. So we can now go book this item, and we'll see that we'll get whatever the appropriate quantity is. I'm going to go to a smaller project. Let's see this one. And I'm going to go add items, set stage. There it is. As I hover over it, I'm going to see a little pop-up tooltip about the things that go along with it, which is a meal, and add to project. So this will be interesting because we're going to get set stage, and below that is meal, and it remembered to put in 3 because it knows that we need to buy 3 meals. So that's pretty good. And the rate that we set a rate of set stage of $40, and I was kind of meaning to do that for the meal, but I actually did it on the set stage item. So the meal, we don't have a price for that rate available. Let's see if there is one here, but we can always put one in. Let's say $30. Okay, so that is the 7 things you must do. We created our company. We created a bunch of contacts. We created user accounts. We created rooms. We created equipment. We created media inventory, and we created services. And I said that I was going to talk about the spreadsheet regarding equipment import as well. So here it is. We're on tab 2 down the bottom. If you've got a spreadsheet of any kind, you can copy paste them into here. It's important that we have some of these things in these specified columns. Manufacturer, model, description really should be separate fields or columns. Barcode is optional. You don't have to have that. Actually, a lot of these are optional. Comments, you don't need, date purchased, cost, and so on. A lot of people ask if they can import rates from a spreadsheet. And that's very difficult to do because all of our resources, rooms, people, equipment, rooms, so on, have metadata that needs to be populated within the rates as well. So if you've got a spreadsheet of rates that doesn't have that, it's very difficult to import that. Somebody's asking if we can set up the calendar. Okay, I will do that. We have a couple minutes left. So I'm going to go into calendar. And for those of you who are looking at previous versions of Studio Suite, you'll notice that our new calendar is completely new, rewritten from the ground up, much more responsive, much more flexible, a lot of different views. We're quite happy with it. So to set up the calendar, it's really the same way as it used to be. We come into settings. Whenever we made something bookable, it added it over to this left side here. So if I look at services, here's the one I created, set stage. If I filter this to look at media, we'll see there's that Fuji thing. And we would never need to see that in a room, but I'm going to go, sorry, in the calendar. I'm going to go put my room, which I created a bit ago. I think I've done this before, so it's there twice. We can add this to the calendar 2 ways. One is just drag it up to here, this header of calendar resources. And we track calendar resources differently than all resources because you might have 1,000 pieces of equipment. You don't need to see 1,000 pieces of equipment in your calendar. So here a more limited set of things makes it a little bit more manageable. And so apparently before I did the demo, I practiced, and so there's an item in there called also my room with a space in the middle. So I'm going to get rid of that one. And now to make it appear, we just click on it, and any of these yellow items appear in the calendar. And presets works the same way as it used to. We can create as many as we want. There's one here called rooms, and I want to add my room to that preset. So by selecting everything I want, and then I hit update, this preset has now been updated. And if I wanted to go look at the equipment preset, here are all of my equipment items, and maybe I want to bring across one of those new expensive cameras. So I'm going to bring across my 9999 camera, and I'm going to show you the other way this time. I select the record, I hit the button, which makes it one green, and then I come down here and hit the plus down at the bottom. And the order that these appear are relevant to these X's here. So if I want this to be my number 1 item, because it's my most expensive item, I select one there, and then I click out, and then it's going to be sorted up near the top when I click out. At least it's supposed to be. There it is. So there is my expensive camera. You can have display sort orders exist more than once. So you can see I've got Studio A at 1 and the expensive thing at 1 also. Those are likely in different presets, so it doesn't matter. But Studio Suite will just sort, in the order of creation if you've got multiple instances of any number there. So I'm going to turn on my camera there and update my preset. And of course, to create a new preset, I'm just going to pick a couple random items here, create a new preset, and name it my random preset. Hit OK on that. So now if I go back to my calendar and I look at my presets, I'm going to presets are really kind of relevant more in these timeline views where we see our resources here. So there I can see my expensive camera. If I want to go to my random preset that I just created. Here is stuff in my random preset. It's a mixture of equipment, rooms, people, and so on. All right, I think that was, so there are more questions. Generating an invoice, please. Okay, so a little bit out of the scope of this project, but I'll just do it very quickly. Somebody's asking to see how an invoice is generated. So I'm going to very quickly create a new project. Let's make Paul Michael the client. I'm going to call it invoice. And only the blue fields are required. And I'm going to say it's Joel's company. And again, I'm just going to pick some random items so that we can make a quick invoice. I know most of my rooms have rates, so I'm going to book those. Incidentally, that's a conflict there. I hover over these, I see the details. I hover over the conflict, and I'll see the details of that conflict. And so now I'm going to go add to project. It's telling me about the conflicts that I knew I had. And so here are some items, and I'm going to just pop in some prices. The default rate for Studio B is $1,000. For you, I'm going to make it $900. And okay, $4 million is a little high for that accessory. Let's make it $12. So now I go select all for invoice, and it's going to go check the checkbox for the items that have rates. I don't have a rate for my Ampeg accessory, so I'm going to go ahead and click on that checkbox. And then I want to book, show that I'm giving them the room, even though I'm not going to put a price on it. So here I've manipulated times, quantities, prices. I'm going to charge you for 7 hours, even though it's costing me 8. And the accessories came in as 5, but I'm going to book it as 4 instead. And now I'm going to make an invoice. So I go invoice selected items. Is this the final invoice? I can do partial if this is like a build by the week kind of project, but I'm going to call this a final invoice. And now we are looking at that invoice, and to print it, I would go print this invoice. So there is the invoice for Joel's company for the project that I just created. Okay, looking at a couple other questions. How much does the software cost? I would say either look at our website, studiosuite.com, and go to, let's see if I've got it up here. Yeah, go to pricing on our website. So these are what we call annual pricing. And that means that you have to pay this every year. Some people like that, but it's a new trend in software licensing. So we're doing that too. We also have perpetual pricing where you buy it once and keep it until the next version comes out that you get, then you can buy it at a discount. So if you click on any one of these, it'll bring you into our shopping cart area where you can get very creative with seats. So I'm going to go to perpetual. I'm going to go to buy. And then I want to pick how many seats I want. Maybe I need 4. Maintenance options. This is actually for technical support. White glove install. That's where we help you install it. Any plugins you want. So there's the price for that. If you have questions on that, please give a call into 800-450-5740, extension 1 for sales. And here's another question. How do you add a collection to the calendar? Okay, collections don't go to the calendar. Only real items go to the calendar. Because a collection would never be booked, well, that's not true. Yeah, okay, so it's kind of an interesting point. Only the members of a collection go to the calendar. So if you remember, I created this expensive camera as part of a collection. So only the members of a collection go to a calendar. Interesting question, though. Okay, I think that's it. We are wrapping just magically on time. I don't know how we did that. If there's any questions, you've got another 15 seconds. But otherwise, thank you very much. We will be posting this to the website at some point in the future. Actually on our YouTube page. So thanks very much, everybody. Stay tuned for future webinar messages, and we look forward to hearing from you if you have any questions regarding tech support or sales. Thanks very much. Talk to you all soon.